everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to build a barbecue, and for that I designed a lot of pieces on Fusion 360 and I printed them out on my FDM printer. So if you don't have a 3D printer, I am sorry that I'm not showing how to make this barbecue for you. But I do make some barbecued skewers in the end of the video with polymer clay, so if you want to make those, you can skip ahead for that. You will find the timestamp in the info box below. I sanded all the parts before I continued. I have this little edge on the back side of the bottom, and that's for the lid of the barbecue to be able to stand up. Now I am putting the legs here in place. And I made a few dividers here to make sure that the legs are kind of spread out to the sides instead of going straight down. And as you see, they are not big enough, so I had to go back to my drawing board and try again. And I tried one more time and that did not work either. And then I tried a third time and that worked really well. So I am going to use my super glue to put these pieces in place, and I'm using my gel here, just putting a tiny dot or bead on each end of these pieces. They have a tiny slant so that you can fit them really nicely here in between the legs. And of course you can find all my 3D prints in the info box below. And that will link to the place where I have all my 3D prints. So if you do have a 3D printer, you can find them all right there. Making sure that everything is glued correctly before I glue in the next one. And again, I'm just taking my time with this, making sure everything is sitting straight and like I want it. Then I'm using a normal super glue to make sure that the legs are going to stay in place. So I'm just popping a few dots or blobs of super glue here into the connection with the legs and the lower part of the barbecue. Okay, language is hard today. Then I am going to let that harden before I continue. I printed out 2 of these grill grates, or what you call those, and one of them is quite too big for the bottom part of the grill or the barbecue. I want it to be fitting between the legs here, so I am cutting off 2 of these sets of sticks here in the width, and that is enough for it to fit in between the legs right here as a little shelf where you can place some of your things, your utilities or whatever. And I am going to place that again with some super glue gel, just a tiny bead of the gel here on this row of the sticks, or what you call that, because that fits together with the legs underneath the barbecue. And then I'm just gonna place it and let that dry in place. The lid is placed together, and I am using a tiny piece of a piano wire here to connect these things. You can use any kind of wire you have, but it needs to be small enough to be able to go inside of the holes here. And I cut it so that it is long enough to be in all 3 parts of the top here, but short enough that you don't see it in the ends. That's why I'm just kind of shuffling it in to the end part, and that's the edge I was talking about, so the lid won't go further than this, it will stay open. Then we have the last piece of the grate here, and I have a handle that I am going to super glue onto the lid. again using my super glue gel, because that is easier to make a tiny bead that is not floating everywhere when you're working with it. And now I just place it where I want my little handle here on the lid. And that is the grill done. Let's go paint it. First I am going in with my liquid silver, and I am going to paint the legs and the grate, or the, I don't know what that's called, this piece with the where you put the meat on. So if you know the name for it, please tell me. Anyway, I am painting the legs with the silver here, and then also these places where you put your meat. And I also decided to paint the handle here, so that is nice and silvery as well. So the barbecue, or the grill itself, I am using a very dark gray color, and I'm painting it on the inside and on the outside, because you can see where I sanded the parts, and that does not look good at all. And this paint also gives it a more cohesive look, so you don't see the print lines as much. So I'm just making sure I paint every little nooks and crannies of the top part here. When I'm done with this part, I'm actually wiping off the most of the paint on my paintbrush, and then I am going lightly over everything on the barbecue to make it look more worn and used. And don't forget these great parts, or what they're called, so they looked used and old as well. Then I have these small oval plates here. They're actually for nail designing, nail art thingies, and I'm using a tiny blob of my super glue gel and gluing that little piece on as kind of this little label saying what kind of grill it is and stuff like that. So I'm just taking this little part and placing that onto the glue dot that I placed here over the handle, using this pickup tool to place it where I want it. There it is. So the grill itself is almost done now. No, wait, we still need a tiny detail in silver. I gave the edges of my barbecue a tiny bit of the silver. Actually, I dipped my pen here in the silver and wiped the most of it off, and then went over the edges on the grill. And then these small fan ducts, or air pockets, or what you call those, I am painting them as well with the silver. The reason I am using this stick here with a little vat on the end is because I can throw that away after using my silver, because this silver is kind of hard to get rid of a paintbrush. I have these black stones here, and I'm going to use that as coal. If you don't have stones like this, you can maybe find some small gravel somewhere and paint it black. But I had these stones, so I'm using that for the coal. And I'm just shuffling them into my little barbecue and using some super glue. This is a liquid. So I am just using quite a lot of this super glue, making sure every single stone is glued in place so nothing will fall out when it's all done. I placed a tiny bit of yellow and a tiny bit of red in this puppet here, and now I am going to use that to paint on the coals here to look like they are turned on, or burning, so they're hot and yellowish, orangey, red here. I'm not doing all the coals because that will look really weird, but here and there I'm making these spots where it looks like it's really hot. Then I am taking my super glue gel and I am placing a bead of super glue here along this edge. There is kind of an edge on both ends, or the long sides of the barbecue, for the little grate to lie on top of. And I'm just putting glue on there and then placing the little grate on top. And there is the barbecue all done. Now let's do something to put on it. So I am going to make some peppers, and I am making a green one. And for the green pepper, I am using a light green and a darker green. And I rolled that out on a setting 7 or 8 on my pasta machine. Then I'm using these eye pens here and cutting them to length of my barbecue. And I am going to make 3 of them. So I'm just going to cut all 3 right away so I have the right length. So I am going to take the dark clay here and I'm going to cut it into a square so that I have a nice shape to work with. If my knife will cut. There we go. Then I'm placing that on the light green clay and I am cutting this out. You can do these with red, yellow and orange as well. Just remember you need a lighter color and a darker color for these to look really good. Then I'm cutting them out in small strip first, and then I am cutting them into not squares but a little longer than squares. And yeah, everything is teasing me right now, so I am going to my X-Acto knife. As you can see, they're not square, they're a little longer than square, but I am cutting all of them out. Then I am using a needle tool to poke a hole in the middle. It's best if you poke it from the lighter side and into the darker side, so it will wrap the right way around when you do that. I made some in yellow as well. This is just a normal brown colored clay, and I am chopping that up because I want it to look like the meat. And I'm just chopping it up in smaller pieces here until I'm happy with the size of it, just like that. And the red colored clay, this is an Xmas red. I am first rolling that into a snake, and then I cut small pieces, and these pieces I am rolling to a little circle and placing my needle tool straight into the middle, making a hole straight through them. And these are my small tomatoes that we are going to put on these skewers in a second. So let me make a few of these. Now let's make this to something that we can put on our barbecue. So first I'm taking one of these green peppers, placing that on my skewer, a yellow one. And the way you put them on doesn't really mean a thing. You can put green first, then red, and so on. But I am starting with a few peppers, then a tomato. Then I take some of this grinded clay and I'm kind of scooping it into a little ball that is not rolled tightly out, so it still has some texture in it, and I'm scooping that onto my skewer as well, and then just continuing until I have filled my skewers with lots of nice things for the grill here. And I actually make all 3 of these, and then I will go bake them. After they have baked, I am using my chestnut brown here, and just putting a tiny dot of that on my puppet, or in my puppet, using a tiny bit of water, and then I'm just mixing that a tiny bit so I have a really wetty brown here, and I'm making kind of lines in a angle on these with this color, and I'm doing it on a kind of both sides of it. I'm first doing it on one side, then turning it 80 degrees or 160 degrees. I'm turning it around and then doing it on the other side as well. Then I'm placing a tiny dot of black in there and putting that as well onto the skewers so it looks like it had been burned a tiny bit. And then I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes. Now it's just a matter of taking my super glue gel here and just squeeze out a bead or two, popping that on the skewer and placing that on the barbecue, making it look like someone is barbecuing some nice skewered meat and vegetables. I had a lot of fun with this build, both making the 3D print files, printing it out and putting it together, and making these skewers. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry to everyone that doesn't have a 3D printer, but I had a lot of fun with this, so I wish you all happy crafting.
Subscribe, like, and ring the bell button.